Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to Whims. And today I'm going to be doing my review for John Carpenter's Halloween and John Carpenter's Halloween 2. Now, the first film came out in 1978 and it was co-written and directed by John Carpenter with his then wife or then girlfriend Deborah Hill. And this film was originally a work for hire. This was a job that was given by Owen Lee Blanc, a producer by the name of Erwin Lee Bronze, who essentially gave John Carpenter the assignment of he wanted a story about a killer stalking babysitters in the Midwest, and he set it on Halloween night. That was the essential pitch for the film. And all the things that were added later, the doctor wanting to track the killer down, Michael Myers and his entire backstory about what happened to him before that night. It was all the invention of John Carpenter. And the film went through various different titles. In fact, it wasn't even supposed to be set in... It wasn't even supposed to have the title Halloween. It was originally going to be called The Babysitter Murders. But then they were worried that when they released that title, they were going to get a lot of negative feedback, because apparently there were either a series of murders that happened along the same time as, this particular film was being pitched, of babysitters being murdered, or whether it was because it was going to get a lot of comparisons to something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So they eventually settled on Halloween, and the story follows young Michael Myers, who murdered when he was a child, and he's been in a psychiatric institution all his life, and he broke out on Halloween night with his therapist, Dr Samuel Loomis, played by the wonderful Donald Pleasance, in hot pursuit. And what I really like about this film is what John Carpenter does very well with this film is he's able to really kind of just use the atmosphere, and he's able to use score, because what John Carpenter says with a lot of soundtracks is that with the main theme, it's iconic, it's very fast-paced, it feels like a heartbeat when you hear it. When you hear that opening theme and you see the lantern and you just see the camera slowly move into the eye, that's all, very rigorous, and it's meant to give you that sense of it almost like being like a heartbeat. It really does kind of like that, have that boom, 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 boom between each and every single scale. But when it gets the very atmospheric scores, or the very atmospheric pieces, or the pieces for ambience, it really does a good job of really feeling like wallpaper, where it's supposed to be something that's just in the background and it's meant to really kind of anticipate what's going to happen. Let's say, for example, there's a much more ambient version of the main theme, like dun 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 dun, and when that happens, there's a moment when that happens in the film later on when Laurie Strode is going back to the house to see what's happened with her friends, where she's just walking up the lawn and she's walking across the road, and you just feel the atmosphere, and you can almost feel the cold, or the very sort of like casual breeze of the wind as she's approaching. But what's really great about this score is it doesn't overstay its welcome. A lot of people might say, oh yeah, the score tends to be a bit repetitive, but I think when he does use the score, he does use it to mostly kind of establish mood or atmosphere or anticipation for something, like in the scene I just mentioned, or like sometimes he'll just let the scene just play out. But what I really think is incredible about this film is this film broke a lot of, well, it didn't break a lot of rules, but it did most certainly establish the slasher film genre. But not only that, but it was also able to make a star of Jamie Lee Curtis, who was the main star of this film, and she was also the daughter of Janet Leigh, who was in films like Psycho. But what I really think is incredible is that this film has become an icon of the horror genre. This film has become iconic. It's become one of the most quoted films ever. Like that line where Donald Pleasance's Dr Loomis says, I saw this boy who was about 10 years old with a blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. That line is constantly being quoted by horror fans. Well, not just horror fans, but film fans, really. I mean, that's one of the most iconic quotes of the film, as well as the line, was that the boogeyman? And he goes, as a matter of fact, it was. That exchange, along with the eyes line, is one of the most iconic quotes from the film, and there's a lot of quotes in the film, like the line, "Hey jerk, speed kills," from Laurie Strode's friend Annie. But then there's also, you know, other lines like "totally," which is repeated constantly by Linda. And there's all these different, you know, quotes, which is really fantastic. But what's really, how the film essentially starts is we see Michael Myers as a child go upstairs, get a knife from the kitchen drawer, and basically, you know, go into his sister's room and murder her upon her having sex on Halloween night. And it's revealed that when Michael Myers leaves the house, he's basically just a child dressed as a clown in a clown mask. So he's been in the asylum most of his life, up until his 20s. He's 21 when he breaks out. And his therapist, by the name of Dr Loomis, is in hot pursuit of him because he knows that there is something wrong with Michael and he is irredeemably evil. And he's gone after a series of teenagers who are now doing a babysitting gig on Halloween night in his hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois. And one of the main babysitters is by the name of Laurie Strode. And there are actually 3 teenagers in this film. There is Laurie Strode, her best friend Annie, and her other friend Linda. Laurie Strode is the quiet one who's very brainy and very much into her books and into her studying and being, you know, a very responsible adult. But she kind of is almost like a bit of an introvert, or what people would call now as an incel, where she basically, you know, just spends a lot of time by herself, kind of likes her own company, likes being by herself, likes being in these quiet places and by herself because then she can sing and do all sorts of other things. But then she could also be quite open and be open to, you know, being around company. But she is very responsible, and that almost is to her detriment in a way. In some cases, there's also Annie, who is kind of like the middle friend. She's the one who's very outgoing and very confident and very popular. She's the one, when she meets Michael Myers, she goes to the car, like when Michael Myers is driving along, she goes, "Hey jerk, speed kills," and says, "I hate a guy with a car and no sense of humour," and things like that. Like, she's constantly, you know, being quite sassy and really kind of, you know, showing how she can be, you know, a bit of a troublemaker in many respects, but she's not too much of a troublemaker to the point where she can actually, you know, just be annoying. She is a character who is also very responsible. And that's something that is quite, you know, compelling about her as well, is that she's both very outgoing. She's so outgoing that she'll quite happily smoke weed with her best friend in a car whilst listening to Don't Fear the Reaper. But then at the same time, she can also be quite responsible as well, but she can be a bit of a ditz as well. So there's all these different things going on there. And then, of course, you have Linda, who's more outgoing. She's a cheerleader. She's very much, you know, someone who, you know, who you know, says words like "totally" all the time, and she forgets her books and things like that. That you really do feel like she's the more, you know, popular one. She's the one who would go to a lot of parties and have fun and get drunk, and all the rest of it. But what I really like about these 3 characters is you really get the sense that they are, you know, just really good friends, and you really just think that they're just having this nice casual chat and they're getting ready to, you know, do their babysitting gig this Halloween night. And Laurie Strode is babysitting Tommy Doyle, who's the neighbour's kid, and of course Annie's babysitting Lindsay. And they're both on opposite sides of the street. They're on the same street, but they are essentially, you know, babysitting, so they go back and forth throughout the evening. And while that's going on, there is a masked figure wearing a strange pale mask by the name of Michael Myers, who is going around and seemingly stalking Laurie. And his first appearance, where we actually fully see him, is when Laurie's in the classroom, and in the classroom the teacher is talking about fate and how fate caught up with several lives here, and how, you know, she says how much, what is the answer to fate, what did each of these authors say? And then of course Laurie still manages to answer the question, even though technically she wasn't listening. But that's very important, because the idea of fate and your fate catching up with you is kind of a recurring motif with Michael in this what turns out to be a very compelling trilogy with Halloween 1 and Halloween 2 and Halloween H2O, in the sense that it's almost fate that these 2 characters would meet and end up clashing. But what's very interesting is that we see him first in that instance, we see him in another instance where he's outside and he's, you know, looking out the window, and she just sort of sees him flittering there. But what's very interesting is we cut to Jamie Lee Curtis's reaction to him, and then we just cut back and we see him disappear. Like, what happened in the interim? Like, how did he disappear so quickly? Is he supernatural? What's going on there? And it really is quite fascinating how they film Michael Myers in this, how they managed to make him scary or intimidating with just a few key shots of just him standing there in that pale mask with that almost mechanics overalls suit. And it's very well done, and there's a lot of great suspense. There's a very great sequence where Michael Myers is she's upstairs in the main landing of the house, and Michael Myers is literally in shadow, like he's in the closet, but you can sort of just see him very slow. You could just see the outline of his mask just barely, you know, visible in the darkness, and he just rushes up to her and he goes to stab her, but he manages to get her in the shoulder, like just barely in the shoulder. That shot is so impressive that it's almost, you know, one of the ones that everyone, you know, remembers from that film. And it's a really great way of showing that even though Michael Myers wasn't supposed to have any kind of agenda, it does sort of hint to the fact that there's something going on with Michael. There's some sort of ulterior motive as to why he is committing these murders, because he doesn't only kill two of her friends, he kills Annie in probably the most brutally realistic way, where it's like he gets behind the back of her car and she realises that the door is locked, but then she goes to go and get the keys on the peg, but then she opens the car door again thinking that it was locked, but then it opens. And then she sees like a smear of mist on the glass, and she goes to wipe it away, but then she sees in the overhead mirror there's a shape behind the wheelchair, sort of like the back seat in sort of like silhouette, excuse me. And then Michael Myers grabs her by the throat and starts choking her, and then he just gets impatient and he just cuts her. And then of course Linda, he ends up, you know, killing again through strangulation. And then he kills, you know, her boyfriend Bob by, you know, grabbing him by the throat, lifting him up, and then just stabbing him with a knife and sort of like waiting there, and then doing that iconic head tilt thing. A sort of thing that I would have really enjoyed at one point or another, but because many people insist on using it, especially in that bloody Halloween 2018 trilogy, I found myself going, can you stop wanking off the first film, please? Do something else of your own. But yeah, that head tilt really has come to annoy me in recent years, because it's like, now they always use it, now they always have him go like this, like this, like this, and it's just really annoying. And I just think, please stop using the head tilt. It's annoying because we get it. It's something that he did once, and that's all there is. But yeah, that was one of the things that annoyed me about the Halloween 2018 trilogy, but I digress. But yes, the first film is very atmospheric. I love the kills. I think it's very wonderful. I also like the fact that Laurie Strode, even though she is the final girl, she doesn't do the stupid, irresponsible things where she runs and she trips and she's like going, oh, help me, or anything like that, or like, oh, running and abandoning people. She is very responsible still. Like, she still takes her job as a babysitter seriously. Like, there's that wonderful scene where she's just stabbed him with the knitting needle, and she goes upstairs to check on the kids, and she goes, are you guys okay? And Tommy goes, oh yeah, we're good. And he goes, what happened to the boogeyman? And she goes, I killed him. And he goes, you can't kill the boogeyman. And then you just see out of the corner of your eye, the camera almost follows you, but you see Michael Myers approaching. Like, you can see him actually, you know, there in the corner of the upstairs landing before the camera even, you know, tilts to show you that he's there, like literally right there with Laurie behind her almost. And it's almost punctuated by Lindsay's scream. I thought that was very well done. But then she puts the kids in a room and she shuts the door and she waits for the click of the lock before she goes out onto the landing and opens the landing door and then goes into that wardrobe. And there's that wonderful moment where she stabs him with the coat hanger in the eye. And then there's another scene where she lets them out, and then she's got going, I need you to go over to the Mackenzie's house and I need you to call the police and tell them to bring themselves over here. Do as I say now. And then there's that moment where she's sort of like resting, and then Michael Myers is on the ground and he just sort of sits up and he turns almost robotically, like he like goes, and then he turns his head it's almost like the Terminator. Like, he does it almost like in a very robotic way, and it really is quite chilling. Like, it really is quite horrific, but it's so good. I absolutely love that final act where it just really kind of all comes together. But it's all just really wonderful. I love the detail with the tombstone, Judith Myers' tombstone, because that highlights something that I'm going to bring up in Halloween 2. And Halloween 2 comes at us from the very same night. It's Laurie Strode in the hospital, and she's just trying to survive the night. But for a good portion of the film, she's mostly just confined to a hospital bed, and she's mostly, you know, just interacting with nurses and doctors throughout the evening. But what's very interesting about this film is, unlike the first film, where it was essentially a very bloodless film, but it was all about terror, this film mostly does focus on quite a lot of blood. There's a lot of bloodletting, there's a lot more sex, and there is a lot more strong language, such as the lines, every line you say is either hell or shit or damn, and then the guy next to her goes, I'm sorry, I guess I just fuck up all the time. And things like that, like lines like that, and it really just goes to show that this is a much more darker film. And in this film, Sam Loomis is still looking for Michael, and he actually does manage to succeed in tracking down Michael and sort of, you know, apprehending him, like shooting him 6 times in the chest. But he just vanishes at the very end of that first film, and Donald Pleasance is forced to, you know, go and find him again. But Deputy Sheriff Bennett, or Beckett, I think his name isn't following him this time round, because his daughter Annie has just died, so that entire sequence is dealt with off screen. But what I really like is that they have that moment in the second film where Sheriff Beckett finds the body of his daughter, and he's like literally just looking at her, and then he just shuts her eyes and he, you know, covers her up. And that was such a good moment. And the moment with the cop where he goes, they saw a body in that house and they believe that it's Annie, the way he says that line, and the way, you know, Sheriff Bennett just goes off to, you know, sorry, not Bennett, Bartlett, sorry, I got the names mixed up. But yeah, I really did like that. I like the fact that there was sort of like a moment between father and daughter, but that just means that, you know, Loomis is now free to do whatever the hell he wants, or he's supervised by someone else. But throughout the course of this film, Michael Myers is trying to track Laurie down. And why is he tracking her down, I hear you ask? Well, it's revealed that that Laurie girl, that's Michael Myers' sister. And a lot of people may not like this twist. A lot of people might say it's a bit contrived. But in many ways, it kind of makes sense. Like, why would he just go after a random person? It has to. Why would he take the tombstone of his sister and use it as a prop in, you know, in this particular house? Why would he use it? I mean, this isn't the Myers house, and this isn't the bedroom. This is a random house. So why would he just go to a random house, get the tombstone, and put it there when it doesn't make any sense? Like, why would you do that? Unless, of course, he was looking for unless, of course, one of his sisters or someone of his family was there, or one of the victims. Like, why would he just do that to any random babysitter? It just doesn't make any sense. So I just think he's showing, you know, Laurie that, look, we're family, and I've already got a place here for Judith. Now I'm going to find a place for you. That's what it's kind of meant to be. It's not meant to be anything else. It's not just simply a fun bit of a decoration. A lot of people like to say it's very ambiguous, but I believe it's because it's his sister, and that's why he wants to do it. And I know John Carpenter said he got drunk, and he basically wrote it while he was drunk on a 6-pack of Budweiser beer. Well, guess what? Stephen King wrote it while he was drunk and high. And so did he when he was writing, you know, books like Cujo and Christine. Like, he wrote some of his most classic stories while he was either drunk or high or both. So I just think, just because John Carpenter isn't much of a fan of it, but then again, John Carpenter isn't much of a fan of anything that he makes nowadays. He tends to look back on some of his earlier films with some degree of disdain, or like, you know, oh, I was kind of, you know, a bit, you know, out of it while I was making this. So I don't often hold a lot of stock in what, you know, John Carpenter does anymore. Or because he made The Ward, so I found myself going, okay, Ghosts of Mars and The Ward, or it's kind of, you know, like, well, why do I believe anything you say anymore? It's that kind of thing. But yeah, I feel like he had a good run until 1994, after In the Mouth of Madness came out, and then he just sort of fell off the rails after that, and it just wasn't the same. But yeah, I feel like just because he hates it doesn't mean I have to hate it. I still love Halloween 2. I still think it's great, along with Halloween 1 and Halloween H2O. It's the perfect trilogy for Laurie and Michael. And I feel like it was wrapped up very well, and it really does a good job of really kind of just saying that, look, this is the end of it. And then, of course, it had to inevitably come back with Halloween Resurrection, which I hate. I hate that film with a passion. Busta Rhymes is terrible, the acting is dreadful, and the idea is absolutely ridiculous. But I absolutely just love the first two. They're amazing films. And yeah, that's my review for Halloween and Halloween 2. I hope you guys like this video, and if you have, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe now today, and let me know what you think of this film and these films in the comments. What do you think of the Halloween duology of Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, the 1978 and the 1981 films? Whatever your thoughts are, please comment below and be sure to let me know, and please subscribe today, and please give it a thumbs up if you like this video. I hope you're all doing very well. This has been Joshua Wims. Take care, bye for now, and happy Halloween.